Hello and welcome to China Global Television Network. Wherever you're joining us, I'm Mahia, Mutua in Nairobi, and this is The World Today. Our top story: Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with the UK Prime Minister in Beijing. Keir Starmer is on an official visit that runs until Saturday. During their talks, the two sides agreed to develop a long-term and stable comprehensive strategic partnership.
President Xi Jinping said that in today's complex and turbulent international landscape, as permanent members of the UN Security Council and major global economies, China and the UK must strengthen dialogue and cooperation, both in maintaining world peace and stability and in promoting economic growth and people's livelihoods. Guided by a long-term historical perspective, China is ready to work with the UK to transcend differences, respect each other, and turn the vast potential of bilateral cooperation into tangible outcomes. This will open new prospects for China-UK relations, deliver benefits to both peoples, and contribute to global peace and development. President Xi said mutual trust is the foundation of stable and enduring state-to-state relations. China has always followed the path of peaceful development. It has never started war nor occupied an inch of foreign land. No matter how it develops, China will never pose a threat to other countries. With a cultural tradition that values harmony and diversity, China sees its economic and trade cooperation with the UK as inherently mutually beneficial. As China embarks on its 15th five-year plan, President Xi called on both sides to expand cooperation in education, healthcare, finance and services, and to jointly advance research and industrial application in fields such as artificial intelligence, bioscience, new energy and low-carbon technology, aiming for shared development and prosperity. He expressed China's hope that the UK will provide a fair, just and non-discriminatory business environment for Chinese enterprises. As two major cultural nations that have significantly contributed to human progress, China and the UK should further enhance people-to-people exchanges and facilitate travel. China welcomes more visits from UK government, parliamentary and local delegations to gain a comprehensive, objective and accurate understanding of the country, and is willing to actively consider granting unilateral visa-free entry to British citizens. President Xi noted that rising unilateralism, protectionism and power politics have seriously impacted the international order. International law can only be effective when all countries abide by it. President Xi stressed the major nations in particular must lead by example, otherwise the world risks sliding back into the law of the jungle. As supporters of multilateralism and free trade, China and the UK should jointly advocate and practice true multilateralism, promote a more just and equitable global governance system, and work toward an equal, orderly, multipolar world and inclusive, beneficial globalization. Prime Minister Keir Starmer conveyed greetings from King Charles III to President Xi. He expressed his pleasure to be the first British Prime Minister to visit China in 8 years, leading a delegation of over 60 representatives from UK business, industry and cultural sectors, a demonstration of the breadth of the UK-China cooperation and the UK's commitment to deepening engagement with China. As major global economies and permanent UN Security Council members, Starmer said that amid today's turbulent and fragile international situation, it is crucial for the UK and China to establish a long-term, stable, comprehensive strategic partnership based on mutual respect and trust. He reaffirmed that the UK's long-standing policy on Taiwan remains unchanged. The UK is ready to maintain high-level engagement with China, strengthen dialogue, and enhance cooperation in trade, investment, finance, environmental protection, and other areas to support mutual economic growth and benefit both peoples. Starmer noted that closer people-to-people exchanges deepen mutual understanding, and the UK is willing to promote exchanges between legislative bodies and other sectors. He added that Hong Kong's prosperity and stability serve the common interest of both sides, and the UK welcomes Hong Kong's role as a unique and important bridge between the UK and China. Recognizing China's key role in international affairs, Starmer said the UK is willing to strengthen cooperation with China on global challenges such as climate change and to jointly uphold world peace and stability.
Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says China and France should strengthen communication and coordination to inject stability into the world. Wang made the remarks in a phone call with Emmanuel Bon, diplomatic advisor to the French president. Wang said China and the European Union are partners rather than rivals. Both sides share similar positions on issues such as promoting a multipolar world and are capable of resolving trade disputes through dialogue. He also expressed hope that France will continue to play an active role within the EU and advance the sound and steady development of China-EU relations. Bon said France attaches a great importance to the China-France comprehensive strategic cooperation and is ready to strengthen strategic communication on major international issues and to jointly address challenges. He said advancing stable China-EU relations fully aligns with the interests of both sides, and France is committed to supporting this effort. Elsewhere, French President Emmanuel Macron has affirmed support for Greenland, calling for European unity at a time of rapid change. Macron hosted Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen at the Élysée Palace on Wednesday. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Just before they went in for the talks, there was a short press statement between the president and the two prime ministers. Emmanuel Macron now wearing those trademark sunglasses many people around the world know so well because of his benign eye condition. Started by speaking in French and then moved into Kalaallisut, speaking in Greenlandic, and then addressing Mette Frederiksen, the Danish prime minister, in Danish as well. And he was saying that France remains committed to territorial integrity, to respecting sovereignty. France was actually opening a consulate in Nuuk. Emmanuel Macron himself referenced his own visit to Greenland in 2025, saying that France was committed to upholding support for Greenland and for Denmark as well.
Face à la posture russe dans le Grand Nord,
we are deeply committed to the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity alongside all our European Union partners, and France will continue to defend these principles in accordance with the United Nations Charter.
You have the Danish Prime Minister who was saying that the world order is rapidly changing. Europe needs to stand up for itself, defend its values, defend democracy.
And thank you for standing up for the fundamental values we share and where we cannot compromise. Democracy, sovereignty, the right of every country to choose its own future.
And the Greenlandic Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen thanked Emmanuel Macron for replying without hesitation, supporting Greenland immediately. France sent some of its specialised mountain patrol troops to the Danish self-governing territory and saying that unity is what we need, not division.
Our close cooperation in this situation is not only about Greenland. It goes beyond Greenland. For us, this is about the values in the world, our democracy, respect for international law and order, and integrity.
Meanwhile, European leaders have been discussing ways to handle the US push to control Greenland. EU Defence Commissioner Andrius Kubilius says Europe must rapidly build independence in defence. He stressed the need to develop pan-European capabilities during a defence agency meeting, urging the continent to invest in production potential. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever has criticised Washington, saying Europe faces mounting geopolitical and economic instability and that the continent's greatest ally is trying to exploit this vulnerability. EU Chief of Diplomacy Kaja Kallas said Europe must step up defence as Trump upends ties.
But Europe needs to adapt to new realities. Europe is no longer Washington's primary centre of gravity. The shift has been ongoing for a while. It is structural, not temporary. It means that Europe must step up. No great power in history has ever outsourced its survival and survived.
Iran has rejected talks with the US while facing continued military threats from Washington. Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi says the US must abandon threats if it wants negotiations. He says Iran welcomes a new deal on its nuclear program but will respond forcefully to any US military operation. An advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warns that any U.S. military action will open the U.S., Israel and its supporters to being targeted by Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump has urged Iran to return to talks over its nuclear program, even as he deploys significant military forces to the Middle East. Trump says they are ready to act if necessary. Well, in an interview with CNN, the Speaker of Iran's parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, questioned the credibility of the Trump administration in negotiations. He called President Trump's decision to pull the U.S. out of an Iranian nuclear agreement in 2018 and his support of Israel in last June's attacks on Iran.
If there's genuine talk to reach a deal within the framework of international regulations, then yes. But that's not the kind of talk the US president is after. He just wants to impose his will on others. He ripped up the JCPOA and threw it in the bin. 2 days before the new round of talks, he torpedoed the talks by giving the green light to Israel to attack Iran.
The United Nations Security Council has held a high-level open debate on the Middle East. Chinese envoy Fu Kong said China supports maintenance of stability in Iran and opposes military adventurism.
Iran is an independent sovereign state. Iran's affairs should be independently decided by its own people. China hopes for and supports the maintenance of stability in Iran. China supports the safeguarding of Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. The use of force cannot resolve problems. Any military adventurism would only plunge the region into the abyss of uncertainty.
A U.S. judge has temporarily blocked a recent Trump administration policy targeting about 5,600 refugees in Minnesota awaiting green cards. The order blocks federal agents from arresting lawful refugees who have not been charged with immigration violations. Tensions continue to escalate in Minneapolis after nurse Alex Pretty was shot dead by ICE agents. In another development, Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar was rushed and sprayed with a liquid at a town hall event on Tuesday. The suspect has since been arrested. Well, that's it for this edition of The World Today. Do stay with us. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live.
Holding guns. Words protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Gunfire and blasts reported in Niger's capital, Niamey. Sudan medics say dozens of civilians have been killed in a drone strike in South Kordofan state. And a Congolese rebel coalition slams a minerals deal between the DRC and the United States, calling it unconstitutional. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. Wherever you're joining us, I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Here's what else is coming up. In business, Uganda's government plans to trim its external budget support by more than 80% in the next financial year. And in sports, CAF imposes suspensions and fines on Morocco and Senegal for AFCON final misconduct. Welcome to the program. We begin with the conflict in Sudan, where medics say dozens of civilians have been killed following a drone strike in Dilling, the second largest city in South Kordofan state. Local reports indicate the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, which has been fighting the army for almost 3 years now, carried out the attack using suicide drones, hitting multiple locations across Dilling. These included the main market as well as the headquarters of the Army's 54th Brigade. The strike comes just 2 days after the Army said it had broken a siege on Dilling, reopening a route linking the area to North Kordofan state. The United Nations warns that escalating clashes in the wider Kordofan region are deepening humanitarian needs and placing civilians at growing risk.
Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that access routes are still cut off and the city's prolonged isolation has pushed conditions to crisis level. Humanitarian operations remain limited, with only a small number of non-governmental organizations operating under severe constraints. Our partners tell us that half of Dilling's civilian population fled last year, while those who remain face critical shortage of food, healthcare, and other basic needs. Across Kordofan, the International Organization for Migration estimates that more than 88,000 people were displaced between late October and mid-January because of this continuing conflict.
A court in Kenya has dismissed an ongoing petition seeking to hold the government liable for alleged security failures linked to the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombing in Nairobi. As CGTN's Enoxi Collier reports, the ruling comes as a major setback to survivors and families of victims who have spent nearly 3 decades fighting for accountability. The blast killed more than 200 people, including thousands.
In August 1998, the U.S. embassies in both Kenya's Nairobi and Tanzania's Dar es Salaam were attacked in an alleged Al-Qaeda operation. More than 220 people were killed in 2 nearly simultaneous truck bomb explosions. In their aftermath, a petition was filed in Nairobi, arguing that the Kenyan government ignored warning signs and failed to strengthen security. However, almost 30 years later, the petition has been denied by Kenya's High Court. The ruling justice said the petitioners had failed to demonstrate that the authorities possessed actionable intelligence that could have prevented the bombing.
For the reasons aforesaid, I find the petition lacks merit and I hereby dismiss the same in its entirety. Each party shall bear its own costs.
Survivors and relatives who had thronged the courtroom expressed their disappointment in the ruling.
It is not fair. So, we're not giving up because my dad wouldn't even have wanted us to give up. I am going to fill his shoes, however big they are. And whatever direction we choose to go, we are going to go together. We're going to do it.
Their lawyer is considering appealing the case.
We wish to say that we are disappointed by that decision of the court. And in a few days, we will be moving to the Court of Appeal because we feel that we provided sufficient evidence that the court would have relied on to find that the government of Kenya knew or ought to have known that an attack, that is the 1998 bomb blast attack, was to take place.
The bombings on the U.S. embassies put Washington on high alert over the threat from Al-Qaeda. 3 years later, it could culminate in the September 11th attacks on American soil. Enoch Sikole, CGTN.
The UN is warning that hunger is intensifying across West and Central Africa, with Nigeria among the hardest hit. Millions of children are now reported to be at risk of malnutrition as food insecurity deepens there. While international aid faces growing pressure, attention is shifting to how governments can step up protection to vulnerable populations. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports from Abuja.
It's been almost 1 month since Zara Hussein brought her 3-year-old son to this stabilization center in Jere in northeastern Borno State. Just weeks ago, Ishak's life was hanging in the balance due to acute malnutrition. Feeding had become increasingly difficult, so bringing him here, she says, was her only option.
He's been taking his meals and milk. If this support stops, we'll be really unhappy because we can't afford to get this care elsewhere.
Ishak's case reflects a much wider crisis unfolding across Nigeria and the region. The UN World Food Programme warns that about 13 million children in West and Central Africa could suffer from malnutrition this year, while more than 3 million people are expected to face emergency levels of food insecurity. Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon and Niger. According to the UN, nearly 35 million Nigerians could face food insecurity in the coming seasons, with more than 3 million children at risk of severe acute malnutrition. While aid agencies are scaling back due to funding constraints, the UN says a shift is now underway, placing greater responsibility on national and local authorities. As international humanitarian funding continues to shrink, the UN says Nigeria is entering a transition phase, one that puts government leadership, domestic financing, and community-driven solutions at the center of the response to hunger and malnutrition. The government says humanitarian assistance must go beyond emergency relief and focus on long-term solutions.
Humanitarian response must not remain as an end in itself. Humanitarian action must serve as a bridge, supporting stabilization, restoring dignity, and enabling households and communities to move permanently out of vulnerability and poverty.
Authorities say priorities now include boosting food production, strengthening social protection systems, supporting local farmers, and expanding nutrition programs, especially for children and pregnant women. But for families like Zara's, survival still depends on continued and immediate support. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And staying in Nigeria, where Lagos police have fired tear gas to disperse residents protesting demolition work in a large waterfront community. On Wednesday, hundreds of residents marched to the Lagos State House of Assembly, demanding an audience with the state governor after refusing police orders to disperse. One protester was injured and taken to hospital. State authorities, backed by armed police, have defended the demolitions at Makoko, where thousands of people have reportedly been displaced. They say the operation targets structures they describe as illegally built, including homes near high-voltage power lines. Residents and rights groups reject this view and say it's being used as a pretext for urban development.
We were tear-gassed at Alausa, Look at this person. He left the house and now he's become disabled.
We had a crowd of thousands of people there, and these people opened fire on unarmed women who were standing just in front of them, babies and mothers, just as they did in Makoko. So it's clear that the state is not willing to learn. It's clear that the state is intent on demolishing not just properties, but even the lives and dignities of people here, as you have seen there.
The Rafah border crossing linking Gaza with Egypt is due to reopen on both sides for the first time in nearly 2 years. It will allow Palestinians to travel in and out of Gaza. The crossing from the Palestinian side has been closed since 2024 after Israel seized it from Hamas. Yasser Hakim now reports from Al Arish next to the Rafah border crossing.
The Rafah border crossing is along this road till the end, linking from Al Arish city to the border crossing itself. And this is the only lifeline that connects Gaza to the outside world.
But this lifeline had been blocked by Israel for the past 2 years after it waged the war on Gaza in 2023 that has so far killed over 70,000 Palestinian civilians. Israel's border blockade has also deprived Palestinians from badly needed humanitarian aid and prevented patients to be treated outside Gaza after the health sector has been destroyed by the Israeli onslaught described by the United Nations as a genocide.
After several delays, Israel has finally agreed to reopen the Rafah border crossing. Remember, it was only open from the Egyptian side, but that was useless because Israel has not allowed anything to go through from the Palestinian side.
The Gaza Health Authority says there are 20,000 Palestinians on the waiting list to travel for medical treatment. Israel says the opening is limited to pedestrian movement. According to the Israeli Prime Minister's office, those leaving Gaza will be free to travel. However, every Palestinian entering Gaza will encounter stricter regulations. First, a security check from a European Union delegation at the border, followed by an Israeli military checkpoint, and then a full screening by Shin Bet, an Israeli intelligence agency.
As for the ones who are leaving Gaza into Egypt, well, the priority is for the injured and the sick, and many of them will be going to the hospital in Al Arish here. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Al Arish city, near the Rafah border crossing, Egypt.
Let's take you to Niger's capital, Niamey, where sustained gunfire and loud explosions have been heard near the city's main airport. Witnesses say the shooting began in the early hours of Thursday morning and lasted for about 2 hours. There has yet been no official statement from the government on its cause and possible casualties. Niger has been under military rule since 2023, when General Abdurrahman Tiani led a coup that removed the elected president. The West African country, along with its neighbors Mali and Burkina Faso, continue to face persistent attacks from armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. The violence has killed thousands and displaced millions across the Sahel region, contributing to ongoing instability and security concerns. Well, let's get more on this story at this hour. We can now cross to Niamey, where we have our correspondent Gar Amadou standing by for us. Gar, thank you for joining us. Just tell us more about the gunfire and explosions near the airport and any casualties or damages from the same that you've been hearing.
Okay, let's say that a few minutes after midnight, we heard a lot of gunshots, explosions, and we noticed that the gunshot and explosions came from the airport, the side of the airport. So when we asked to some people what was happening, they told us that it may be a terrorist attack against the airport, because you should know that some days before this attack, these events, we had information from official sources saying that the airport may be attacked by terrorists. So there is a kind of enforcement of security forces around the airport, but it seems that despite the fact that we have a lot of security forces near the airport, the terrorists decided that they will attack, and they attacked in the night, a few minutes after midnight.
Right. As yet, we still don't know who is responsible for this attack, but Amadou, are we hearing anything from the authorities? What are they saying about this?
We do not have any official statement saying what happened yesterday. We are still waiting. Maybe we'll have information during the, in the afternoon maybe, or before the night, we have a statement saying what happened. But we do not have any information about the casualty, and we do not know who is, the author of the attack. We know that this kind of attack happened in Bamako. Last year, the airport of Bamako was attacked, and let's say Al-Qaeda claimed to be the author of the attack. We are supposing that maybe Al-Qaeda tried to do the same attack on the airport of international airport of Niamey, because you know that the airport is supposed to be the most, let's say, the high level of security around airports in Africa or in every country. So by attacking the airport, they are trying to show to people that they can attack any kind of target in the city, no matter if we have security forces or not.
Right, and finally, you did mention that this attack began after midnight there. What can you tell us about the situation in the capital right now?
Right now, everything is quiet. We say that the gunshot stops 3 hours before after the beginning, and now we can say that security forces are under alert, and people are afraid because the fact that the first time the capital is being attacked by terrorists, people are afraid that maybe another attack will happen in the capital, in the middle of the capital, maybe against a hotel or something like that. As you know that in Burkina Faso and in Mali, this kind of attacks against hotels happened some years ago. So people are afraid that maybe after the airport, maybe another target will be in the capital or somewhere else. And there is a lot of fear among peoples.
All right, Gary Amadou, thank you very much for speaking to us from Niamey. Thank you for those updates. Moving on to Mozambique, where disaster relief efforts continue as the country reels from what experts have called the worst flooding in a generation. The country's neighbors in southern Africa have stepped up aid assistance, and teams from the UK and Brazil are also involved. Officials say the water levels are beginning to recede, but their teams are still struggling to reach flood victims in the worst affected areas. CGTN's David Mbithi with that report.
The scale of the flooding in southern Mozambique's Mahia district has forced thousands to flee their homes for safety. The disaster has wreaked havoc on communities, leaving roads impassable and neighborhoods submerged. Residents of flood-stricken Josina Island described enduring desperate conditions before help arrived.
We suffered a lot in Josina Island when we were hit by floodwaters. We were helped by a nearby Q10 school. When water got in our houses, all of us from the area went to the school. As we were standing in the classrooms, the water invaded the place. So the local teacher told us to climb on top of the desks, where we sat from night to morning. There was no way to sleep in the water. We stayed for 3 days in the water and we left on the 4th day.
The group was rescued on the 4th day by helicopters, which flew them to safety. Rescued residents have been receiving food and shelter, and local volunteers have also been mobilized to assist stranded traders and boat operators. The items we are loading here are to help the traders. As conductors of the boats, we saw they were suffering in this place. They can't cross to the other side, so we are helping them. But we are at the end of this duty because the water is receding. On Tuesday, Mozambican President Daniel Chapo said the water levels were receding in some of the worst affected districts, but the situation remained critical. According to official data, the floods triggered by weeks of intense rainfall have affected more than 600,000 people across southern and central Mozambique. David Mbithi, CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, the DRC's Corneille Nangaa, who heads the Congo River Alliance, has criticized a minerals partnership between the DRC and the United States. Nangaa said key mining areas were under rebel control and warned the deal could face legal and contractual disputes. Congo's presidency has rejected the claims, however, describing them as speculative and saying the agreement falls within the constitutional powers of the elected government. Officials say the partnership, which links U.S. access to critical minerals with investment and security cooperation, will be submitted to Parliament for approval. The eastern DRC is exceptionally rich in these so-called 3T minerals, crucial for global electronics and green technology, alongside significant copper and cobalt deposits. Still in the Democratic Republic of Congo, it's been a year now since the M23 rebel group seized large parts of the east, including the strategic cities of Goma and Bukavu. The leadership has been boasting of restored peace in the region, even as fighting with government forces continues in many places. Nevertheless, residents in parts of Goma say they are adjusting to the new administration, which has enabled them to resume business. CGTN's Wanja Mungai with more.
Nighttime in the Democratic Republic of Congo's eastern capital of Goma, and marketplaces are bustling with activity as businessmen and women ply their trade undeterred by darkness. It's an indicator of peace in a once troubled area. Residents say since the M23 rebels took over the city about a year ago, security has improved.
We sell until 9:30 p.m., sometimes even later because we only work at night. We start from 7 p.m. until 9:30 or 9:45 p.m. Before, when the army and Wazalendo controlled the city, we used to close services too early because our goods were seized. Bandits stole our money and took our phones. But today, we no longer fear anything because we already have security.
While some feel a sense of relief with the new leadership, others say the economy is struggling, as some facilities like banks and the airport are still not operational.
Our business is not doing well because the airport and banks are not operational. People are not buying anymore. Before, we sold a lot in a short time, but today we have a lot of time to sell, but we're just forcing ourselves. There are no sales.
This church in Mugunga neighborhood once sheltered displaced people at the height of conflict in eastern DRC. But since M23 took control, the displaced people were ordered to return to their homes.
It had been difficult for the displaced because they returned in very difficult conditions, and it shocked us too. It broke our hearts because they returned in those conditions. They had nothing. They had no assistance, but they returned like that. That hurt us a lot.
The administration now in charge is confident that areas under its leadership will flourish as long as they are peaceful.
Goma is a secure city. There are no armed bandits. You will no longer hear gunshots in Goma, as was the case before. In Goma, the population sleeps and lives in safety. Our security forces are working hard for this security. On the administrative level, it must be said that all areas of Goma, particularly Bukavu, the space is well administered.
The government maintains it must regain control in North and South Kivu through diplomatic and military intervention.
Don't think for a minute that we are sitting idle. On the contrary, we should know that every day, whether in diplomatic frameworks or in strengthening our army, we are working to achieve the goal of removing the father, Rwanda, and the sons, the M23, from our territory. But we cannot succeed if we are not all mobilized.
Meanwhile, residents hope that the peace they now enjoy may last forever and that the banks may reopen to help the economy recover. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
It's time for a short break. Here's what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Uganda's government says it plans to trim its external budget support by more than 80% in the next financial year. And US-bound shipments from South Africa plunge due to Donald Trump's trade tariffs. Now, Uganda has announced plans to slash its external budget support by around 84% year on year in the next financial year, starting July. In a post on X, the country's finance ministry says the support, which typically comes in the form of loans and grants, was projected to fall to around $93 million. That's down from the previous year's $586 million. Meanwhile, the East African economy also plans on cutting domestic debt issuance by 21.1% in the next financial year. The move comes as the government accelerates efforts to ramp up domestic revenues to help trim its ballooning public debt. Now to another major cut announcement. Ghana's central bank has slashed its main interest rate by 250 basis points to 15.50%. The cut is below most economists' expectations there and is the lowest level in 4 years as inflation drops. The bank has now brought down its main lending rate by a cumulative 12.5 percentage points since starting its current easing cycle last July. Ghana's central bank governor attributed the latest monetary policy committee decision to macroeconomic conditions, which he said had improved significantly. The bank now expects consumer inflation for the first 6 months of the year to be broadly aligned with the bank's medium-term target range. Growth, meanwhile, is projected to remain strong in 2026. South African exporters hit hard by U.S. trade tariffs are hoping for a reprieve when the U.S. Supreme Court rules on the matter. Recent data shows U.S.-bound shipments plunged in the fourth quarter of 2025, which is typically the strongest period due to holiday demand. Small and medium-sized exporters were among the hardest hit. They saw a near 50% swing against expected volumes. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
South African winemakers have been hard hit by a 30% tariff imposed by United States President Donald Trump's administration last August. Producers export up to 5% of their volumes to the United States. Once profitable cross-border sales have now turned into loss-making transactions.
Our competitors, especially in the U.S. market, are the Southern Hemisphere guys, South America, Chile, Argentina, New Zealand and Australia, and those guys have had lesser tariffs than us. So our wines are becoming expensive in the market. So yeah, it's really going to be tough.
Other industries, including the automotive sector and smaller exporters selling fashion items, art and skincare products directly to U.S. consumers, have also felt the pinch. They are pinning their hopes on a case before the U.S. Supreme Court, which will determine the legality of the tariffs imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a move that upended global trade rules.
If it finds that, as have been preliminarily found, that the tariffs have been imposed illegally or incorrectly by Mr. Trump, which I'm sure has happened, then duties will have to be refunded, and the tariffs will have to be reversed. It might also open the door for claims against the United States.
A ruling in favor of the administration could mean continued turbulence for global trade until Trump steps down in 2029.
But if it is constitutional, we can expect President Trump to double down on these tariffs, because now it'll set a precedent that he is allowed to use this act. He is allowed to do whatever he wants with these tariffs. If he wants to impose a 100% tariff on a country, he is legally allowed to do that if it is constitutional.
South Africa's continued inclusion in the African Growth and Opportunity Act is also under threat. AGOA is a presidential trade agreement that gives African exporters duty-free access to the U.S. Although it has been extended for 3 years, a diplomatic standoff with the Trump administration could see South Africa booted, compounding pressure on an automotive industry already reeling from higher tariffs and rising imports.
It will be a big impact in the sense that the United States is the third biggest export market for us. And that market has grown over the years. I think since 2000, it has grown by 498%. If you think of the direct jobs, total AGOA, it's about 86,000 people are employed through AGOA and about 125,000 people in the value chain. So it is big.
Exclusion from AGOA could also reshape trade dynamics across the continent.
If our neighboring countries get granted AGOA and South Africa does not, it creates South Africa into a somewhat island that's not favorable to be invested in. If a manufacturer comes from Asia or Europe is looking for an African country to manufacture goods to export to the United States, South Africa will be lost on that list.
Much is riding on the Supreme Court ruling, which was initially expected late January, but was postponed following President Trump's visit to the World Economic Forum in Davos. The decision is widely anticipated as it could have significant implications for the future of current tariff framework. Julie Shire, CGTN, Cape Town.
Now, as urbanization accelerates across Africa and the Middle East, Morocco is emerging as a regional frontrunner in smart city development, placing smart transport at the heart of its urban strategy. The country is reportedly investing heavily in intelligent traffic systems, data-driven public transport and major rail projects to improve mobility. Anand Shawashi has more.
Morocco is ramping up investment in large-scale mobility infrastructure, with railway projects at the center of its urban transport strategy. These projects are designed to ease congestion, improve daily commuting, and strengthen connectivity across the country's largest metropolitan area.
His Majesty the King, may God assist him, also presided on Wednesday, September 24th, at the prefecture of the Hey Hassini district in Casablanca over the launch of major structuring railway projects with a significant impact on mobility with Greater Casablanca, with a total cost of 20 billion dirhams.
Authorities are upgrading railway stations and advancing plans to extend the high-speed rail line, boosting intercity mobility and easing pressure on road networks.
The ministry has a vision that includes several priorities, notably upgrading a number of railway stations, as well as working on the development of a high-speed train. It will at least reach Marrakesh.
Cities such as Casablanca, Rabat and Marrakesh are deploying smart traffic systems using sensors, AI and cameras to manage traffic in real time, adjust signals, detect incidents and improve mobility and road safety.
The city is smarter. Public transport is smoother, better and faster.
AI-assisted cameras, sensors and systems have transformed traffic in the city. Cutting-edge technological and sustainable solutions have made our commutes better.
Public transport networks are also benefiting from data-driven planning, with city authorities using real-time information to better manage buses, trams and key transport corridors, particularly during peak hours.
Morocco's smart city development objectives include but are not limited to Casablanca, Rabat, Marrakesh and Tangier. Morocco holds ambitions to become a regional frontrunner in these projects.
Officials say Morocco's smart city push extends beyond flagship projects in Casablanca, Rabat, Marrakesh and Tangier. There are also plans to expand to additional cities as the country steps up preparations for co-hosting the 2030 FIFA World Cup. Experts say the massive tournament will be a major boost to the country and act as a catalyst to accelerate digital mobility and urban innovation nationwide. Adan Shawishi, CGTN.
To the U.S. now, where the Federal Reserve has kept the policy rate unchanged. Despite calls from President Donald Trump for more aggressive interest rate cuts, in its first rate decision of 2026, the Fed held the policy rate steady at the target range of between 3.5% and 3.75%, citing still elevated inflation alongside solid economic growth.
My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. The U.S. economy expanded at a solid pace last year and is coming into 2026 on a firm footing. While job gains have remained low, the unemployment rate has shown some signs of stabilization, and inflation remains somewhat elevated. In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy rate unchanged. Having lowered our policy rate by 75 basis points over the course of our previous 3 meetings, we see the current stance of monetary policy as appropriate to promote progress toward both our maximum employment and 2% inflation goals.
Right, it's time for the sports. Here's what's coming your way up next. CAF imposes suspensions and fines on Morocco and Senegal for AFCON final misconduct. Time for the sport. In African football's governing body, CAF has slapped both Senegal and Morocco with hefty fines, as well as player suspensions as a result of the chaos that erupted during the AFCON final earlier this month. Senegal received the heaviest sanction after being fined $615,000 for what CAF called the improper and unsupporting conduct of its supporters, their players and staff, which brought the game into disrepute. Head coach Pap Thiaw was handed a 5-match suspension and a $100,000 fine. Everton's Iliman Ndiaye and Ismaila Sarr were given 2-game suspensions for their unsporting behavior towards the referee. Now, the hosts, Morocco, were also fined $315,000 for inappropriate behavior by ball boys and improper conduct of their players and staff, as well as their fans. Ismail Saibari was handed a $100,000 fine, while captain Ashraf Hakimi got a 2-game ban for unsupportive behavior. Senegal won the match 1-0 after extra time. Now to women's club football, and Asfar Rabat have failed in their bid to reach the final of the inaugural Champions Cup, as the African champions were thrashed 6-0 by Arsenal, who won last season's UEFA Champions League. Swedish forward Stina Blackstenius got the scoresheet moving for the Gunners in the early minutes. Any chance of a comeback by the Moroccan team were quickly dismissed, however, as Arsenal scored 3 more before the break. Alessia Russo bagged 2 in the second half. Arsenal will meet Corinthians in Sunday's final at the Emirates Stadium after the Brazilians stunned Gotham FC of the United States in the other semi-final. The Champions Cup features the champions of 6 continents. On to European football now. In last night's big finish to the Champions League phase, as dozens of clubs learned their fate for the knockout rounds, and it was a great night for Jose Mourinho, whose Benfica side scored late against his former club to squeeze into the playoffs. The 4-2 result also saw the 15-time champions Real Madrid pushed out of the top 8. Real struck first on the half-hour mark through Kylian Mbappe, yet it was Benfica who would go in ahead of the break, following goals from Andreas Gelderup and Vangelis Pavlidis. Gelderup put the Portuguese 2 up early in the second half, only for Mbappe to pull one back moments later. Despite winning 3-2 heading into stoppage time, Benfica were going out of the competition on goal difference. However, in a dramatic finale that saw Real's Asensio and Rodrigo both red-carded, Benfica's goalkeeper got on the end of a free kick to get the goal they needed. Here is Jose Mourinho now.
I've won and lost matches, and I've won and lost knockout ties in the last minute, but never with a goalkeeper scoring a fantastic goal that even the best strikers in the world would love to score. So the emotion really is huge, even for someone like me, who's already been through everything. I thought I'd been through everything. Turns out I haven't been through everything after all. The big guy scores a fantastic goal, and I think that for Benfica's is a fantastic night. Regardless of what happens in the future, I know we had incredible luck in the draw. We got either Inter or Real Madrid. Regardless of that, it's a fantastic night and a night to remember.
As I always say, when things don't go right, when the team is far from the level we were at, for example, in Villarreal, the responsibility is always mine, because I didn't manage to get the players to approach the match in the way I wanted.
Meanwhile, Arsenal became the first club to win all 8 matches in the league phase after edging Kazakhstan's Kairat Almaty 3-2 at home. With a place in the last 16 already assured, Mikel Arteta was able to make 11 changes to the side that lost to Manchester United in the Premier League over the weekend. He said bouncing back with a win shows how far his team has come on the European stage.
Yes, I'm very proud of the players and the run that we had in this first stage of the competition. Very difficult to win 8 games in a row in in the Champions League, and you can see what happened with other teams. So we really need to acknowledge that. Today's game, with a lot of changes as well, started in a really good way. The attitude, I think, was spot on from everybody, and we demanded that. Disappointed with the 2 goals that we conceded, and as well with the level of efficiency, because we should have scored many more in the game. But I think it was a good way to end the competition, the first part.
In other action, Premier League champions Liverpool routed Qarabağ 6-0 to finish third behind Arsenal and Bayern Munich. Also reaching the last 16 are Chelsea. The Blues came from behind to eliminate the Serie A champions Napoli. Manchester City defeated Galatasaray to also move into the top 8, and a 1-1 draw with Newcastle means the defending champions PSG will have to go long route again this season. Well, we're just days away now from the opening of this year's Winter Games, and the countdown is continuing in the host country, Italy. The Olympic torch relay visited the ski jump venue in Predazzo yesterday as the flame made its way from Canazei to Cavallesi. One of the key stops was the nicknamed the Ferry of the Dolomites, and is known to be a very picturesque resort. On today's 53rd stage, the flame will cross some of the representative territories of South Tyrol and Trentino. It is scheduled to arrive in Milan for the game's opening ceremony next Friday. Well, Italian officials are pushing back against the presence of U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents at the Olympics. Milan Mayor Giuseppe Sala says he doesn't want ICE agents operating in Italy, arguing they cannot guarantee alignment with Italy's security policies. ICE later confirmed its personnel would collaborate with Italian authorities, focusing on security support for the U.S. delegation and prevention of transnational criminal threats. Italian Interior Minister met with the U.S. ambassador about the issue. Matteo Piandettozzi emphasized that full sovereignty over public order lies exclusively with Italian law enforcement. Now to Australian Open tennis, and Novak Djokovic has advanced to the final 4, but once again because of an injury to an opponent. Serbia's 24-time Grand Slam winner didn't even have to play Jakub Mensik in the 4th round, with the Czech player withdrawing before the match. And he was 2 sets down in his quarter-final against Lorenzo Musetti when the Italian pulled up in the 4th game of the 3rd set. The 23-year-old tried to play on, but he eventually chose to retire. After the match, Djokovic wished his opponent well and admitted the Italian was the better player on the day. And that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Do remember, if you'd like to reach us, you can always send your feedback to those contacts on your screen, and follow us as well on all our digital media platforms. I'm Mahia Mutua. Thanks for watching Africa Live.